I buried my husband on a Tuesday, and by Friday, I knew my son was a stranger. Hey, if you're watching this from wherever you are in the world, drop a comment and let me know. I need to know I'm not alone in this. And please, check the description box below. There are more stories like mine there. Stories about betrayal, survival, and what happens when the people you love become the people you fear. My name is Margaret. I'm 63 years old. I've been a wife for 41 years, a mother for 39, and a widow for exactly 2 weeks and 4 days. My husband, Robert, died of a heart attack in our kitchen on a Sunday morning while I was upstairs getting dressed for church. I heard the crash. I ran downstairs. I found him on the floor near the coffee pot, his hand still reaching for something I'll never know. The paramedics came. They tried. But he was already gone. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I just stood there in my church dress and bare feet, watching them cover his face with a white sheet, thinking about how we'd argued the night before about whether to replace the kitchen cabinets. That was our last conversation. Kitchen cabinets. The funeral was small. Robert didn't have many friends left. Most had passed or moved to Florida. Our son, David, flew in from Seattle with his wife, Jennifer. They stayed at a hotel downtown even though we have 3 empty bedrooms. Jennifer said it was easier that way, closer to the airport for when they'd leave. I didn't argue. I was too tired to argue about anything anymore. David cried at the service. He gave a eulogy about his father teaching him to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to change a tire. He talked about integrity and hard work and American values. People nodded. Some dabbed their eyes. I sat in the front pew and wondered if we were talking about the same man. Not because Robert wasn't those things. He was. But because David hadn't called his father in 6 months before he died. Not once. Not on his birthday. Not on Father's Day. Not just to say hello. After the burial, people came back to the house. There was too much casserole and not enough napkins. My sister, Linda, kept refilling coffee cups and telling people where the bathroom was. David and Jennifer stood near the fireplace accepting condolences like they were receiving guests at their own party. I watched David laugh, actually laugh, at something his father's old poker buddy said. The sound made my skin crawl. If you've ever lost someone and then had to smile through a room full of strangers eating potato salad in your living room, you know that feeling. That underwater, can't quite breathe feeling. If you do, leave a comment. Tell me I'm not crazy for feeling this way. Around 4 o'clock, people started leaving. Linda helped me pack up leftovers. David disappeared upstairs. Jennifer scrolled on her phone. By 5:30, the house was empty except for the 3 of us and Linda, who was putting on her coat. You going to be okay tonight? Linda asked, squeezing my hand. I'll be fine, I lied. Call me if you need anything. I mean it, Maggie. I nodded. She left. The door clicked shut. The house felt impossibly quiet. David came downstairs with Robert's old briefcase. Mom, we need to talk about Dad's affairs. Affairs. Like Robert had been carrying on secret romances instead of building kitchen cabinets for 40 years. Can it wait? I asked. I'm exhausted. It's important, he said, setting the briefcase on the dining room table. We need to go through his papers, figure out what he left, how everything's structured. Jennifer appeared beside him, her phone finally down. It's better to get ahead of these things, she said in that smooth, practiced voice she uses. She sells real estate in Seattle. She's good at making terrible situations sound like opportunities. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was wearing his father's watch. I didn't remember him taking it, but there it was on his wrist, catching the light from the chandelier Robert and I picked out together 30 years ago. Your father and I had everything organized, I said carefully. There's a will. There's a lawyer. We'll handle it the right way. Of course, David said, but something flickered across his face. Impatience, maybe. Or annoyance. I just thought we could get a head start. You shouldn't have to deal with all this alone. I'm not alone, I said. I have Linda. I have the lawyer. I have everything I need. Jennifer glanced at David. It was quick, just a flash of eye contact, but I caught it. That look married people give each other when they've already discussed something in private. When they have a plan. "We're just trying to help, Mom," David said. "I know," I said. "But I didn't know." "Not really. Not yet." They left an hour later. Jennifer hugged me at the door and said something about staying strong. David kissed my cheek and promised to call in a few days. I watched their rental car pull out of the driveway and disappear down the street. Then I went upstairs to Robert's office and locked the door. The papers were exactly where Robert said they'd be. In the bottom drawer of his desk, in a manila folder marked "For Margaret Only." I'd known about them for years. We'd planned everything together after his first heart scare 5 years ago. But I hadn't looked at them since. Hadn't needed to. Robert was alive. Robert was healthy. Robert was supposed to outlive me. That was the joke we always made. I opened the folder. The house paid off, in my name only. 4 cars, Robert's truck, my sedan, the old Mustang he'd restored in the garage, and the Lexus we'd bought last year. All titled solely to me. And the bank account. The one Robert had opened 20 years ago and quietly added to every month. The one nobody knew about except him, me, and now the lawyer. $1.4 million. I sat there in Robert's chair, in his office that still smelled like his cologne, and stared at the number. We'd lived modestly. We'd never taken fancy vacations or bought designer anything. Robert drove a 15-year-old truck. I clipped coupons. But Robert had been careful. He'd been smart. He'd invested well and saved better. And he'd made absolutely certain that everything, every single thing, was protected. In case David ever needs it, he'd told me years ago when we set it up. In case something happens to me and you need to take care of yourself without anyone interfering. At the time, I thought he was being paranoid. Overprotective. Robert always worried about things that would never happen. Except now he was dead. And I was holding papers that proved he'd known something I hadn't. I put the folder back. Locked the drawer. Went downstairs and made myself tea I didn't drink. That night I lay in bed, on my side, Robert's side still empty and cold, and made a decision. I wouldn't tell David about the money. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Something about the way he'd looked at that briefcase. The way Jennifer had glanced at him. The way they'd stayed at a hotel instead of in their childhood home. I'd wait. I'd watch. I'd see what happened next. It only took 6 days to find out I was right to keep my mouth shut. David called on Monday. "Just checking in," he said, his voice crackling slightly through the phone. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I said. I was in the kitchen, staring at the spot where Robert had died. I'd scrubbed the floor 3 times, but I still couldn't walk across it without seeing him there. "Listen, Mom, Jennifer and I have been talking. We think you should come stay with us for a while. In Seattle. You shouldn't be alone right now." "I'm fine here," I said. "It's a big house. Too big for one person. And you've never lived alone. You went from your parents' house to married life. This has to be overwhelming." He wasn't wrong about that. But something about the way he said it, like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with sharp objects, made my jaw tighten. "I appreciate the offer, David. But this is my home. I'm not leaving it." There was a pause. Then, "Have you talked to Dad's lawyer yet?" "I have an appointment next week." "What day?" "Wednesday." "Want me to fly back?" "I can be there. Help you understand everything." "I understand everything just fine," I said, sharper than I meant to. Another pause. Longer this time. "Okay," he finally said. "Well, keep me posted. And Mom? If there's any life insurance or assets or anything like that, I should know. For tax purposes. Estate planning. That kind of thing." "Your father and I had everything set up properly," I said. "There won't be any surprises." Except there would be. Just not for him. We hung up. I stood there holding the phone, my hand trembling slightly. David had never asked about money before. Never cared about tax purposes or estate planning. He made good money in tech. Jennifer's real estate business was booming. They didn't need anything from us. So why did it feel like he was circling something? That Wednesday, I met with Robert's lawyer, Howard Chen. No, wait, I need to use authentic names. Howard Mitchell. He'd been our lawyer for 20 years, handled everything from our wills to the deed on the house. He was 70, nearly bald, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Margaret," he said, standing when I entered his office. "I'm so sorry about Robert. He was a good man." "Thank you, Howard." We sat. He pulled out a file, the same information I'd already seen, but official now, notarized and sealed with all the legal weight behind it. "Robert made things very clear," Howard said. "Everything goes to you. The house, the vehicles, the investments. There's a separate account, the one you're aware of, that's solely in your name. He set it up that way deliberately." "I know." "He also left instructions that you're not obligated to disclose any of this to anyone, including David." I looked up sharply. "He said that specifically?" Howard nodded. "He updated the paperwork about 3 years ago. Added a clause. He was very insistent." 3 years ago. What had happened 3 years ago? I tried to remember. David had visited that Christmas. There'd been some tension, there always was, but nothing major. Or had there been? Had Robert seen something I'd missed? Did he say why? I asked. Howard hesitated. "He said he wanted you protected. That's all he told me." Protected? From what? From whom? I left Howard's office with all the documents in my purse and a knot in my stomach that wouldn't untie. I drove home slowly, watching the familiar streets blur past. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for 10 minutes, just breathing. Robert had known something. 3 years ago, he'd known something, and he'd protected me from it without ever telling me what it was. That night, David called again. "How'd it go with the lawyer?" "Fine," I said. "Everything's in order." "What does that mean exactly? Like, did Dad have life insurance? Retirement accounts?" "David, why are you so concerned about this?" "I'm not concerned, Mom. I'm just trying to help you navigate everything. This stuff is complicated." "It's not complicated," I said. "Your father took care of everything." "Great. So what did he leave?" The question landed like a slap. "That's private," I said quietly. "Private? Mom, I'm your son. I'm not some stranger. I'm trying to make sure you're taken care of." "I am taken care of. Your father made sure of it." "How much are we talking about here?" Silence. Long, terrible silence. "I need to go," I said. "Mom." I hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I'd never hung up on my son in his entire life. But the way he'd asked that question, how much, like he was calculating something. Like Robert's death was a math problem he needed to solve. If you're still watching, thank you. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment. Tell me I'm not alone in this. And check the description. There are more stories there that might make you feel less alone too. I'm glad I kept it a secret. I'm glad I didn't tell David about the house in my name, the cars in my name, the bank account with all that money that Robert had protected. Because 4 days later, just 4 days, I found out exactly why Robert had been so careful. It was Sunday. I was in the garden, pulling weeds that didn't need pulling, trying to keep my hands busy so my mind wouldn't spiral. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Can you send me Dad's social security number and date of birth? Need it for something." My stomach dropped. I called him immediately. "What do you need that for?" "Just some paperwork." "What paperwork?" "Mom, it's not a big deal. Just send it." "No. Tell me what it's for." He sighed. That exasperated sigh I'd heard 1,000 times when he was a teenager and I wouldn't let him do something he wanted. "Fine. Jennifer and I are looking into Dad's benefits. Making sure you're getting everything you're entitled to." "I don't need you to do that." "Well, someone has to. You can't just ignore this stuff." "I'm not ignoring anything. Howard is handling it." "Howard's ancient, Mom. He probably doesn't even know about half the programs available. Jennifer knows people. She can help maximize. Maximize what, David? Silence. I'm not sending you his social security number, I said. Jesus, Mom, I'm trying to help you. Then stop. The words burst out of me. Stop calling. Stop asking about money. Stop treating your father's death like it's some kind of financial opportunity. That's not what I'm. It's exactly what you're doing. My voice cracked. Your father is dead, David. Dead. And all you care about is what he left behind. That's not fair. Isn't it? He hung up on me that time. I stood there in my garden, dirt under my fingernails, tears streaming down my face, knowing that whatever relationship I'd had with my son was broken. Maybe it had been broken for years and I just hadn't wanted to see it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that text. About why David would need Robert's social security number. About what Jennifer knew people meant. At 2 in the morning, I got out of bed and went to Robert's office. I opened his laptop, the password was my birthday, it had always been my birthday, and checked his email. There was nothing unusual. Bills. Spam. Old messages from his poker buddies. Then I checked the trash folder. And there it was. An email from David. Sent 6 months ago. Subject line, we need to talk about Mom. I clicked it open. Dad, I'm worried about Mom's spending. Jennifer noticed she bought a new car last year and she's been taking trips with Linda. I know you guys have savings, but at your age, you need to be more careful. What if something happens to you? What if there are medical bills? I think we should talk about setting up a trust or something to make sure she doesn't blow through everything if you're not around to manage it. Let me know when we can discuss. D. I read it 3 times. Robert had never responded. At least, not in email. But I knew he'd read it because it was in the trash folder, not the inbox. He'd read it. And he'd deleted it. And then, 3 years ago, he'd updated his will to make sure everything was solely in my name, protected from everyone. Including our son. The new car David mentioned? I'd saved for it for 2 years. The trips with Linda? Weekend visits to her daughter in Virginia, driving distance, staying in her guest room. We'd spent maybe $300 total. But David thought I was blowing through money. David thought I needed someone to manage things for me. David thought I was a problem that needed solving. And now Robert was gone. Now there was no one to stop him from solving it. I closed the laptop. Sat in the dark. And realized with cold creeping certainty that my son wasn't worried about me. He was worried about his inheritance. An inheritance that didn't exist. Because everything was mine. Robert had made sure of it. But David didn't know that yet. And when he found out, what would he do? I didn't hear from David for 3 days after our fight. 3 days of silence that felt both like relief and like waiting for a bomb to go off. I kept my phone close, jumping every time it buzzed. But it was never him. Just Linda checking in. Just the pharmacy reminding me about a prescription. Just the lawn service confirming their schedule. On Thursday, Jennifer called. Margaret, hi. It's Jennifer. She'd never called me Margaret before. It was always Mom or Maggie. The formality made my spine stiffen. Hello, Jennifer. Listen, I want to apologize. David told me about your conversation, and I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not trying to interfere. We're just worried about you. I appreciate that, I said, keeping my voice neutral. The thing is, Margaret, we've been doing some research. When someone loses a spouse, there are a lot of financial decisions that need to be made quickly. Tax implications, estate settlements, benefit claims. It can be overwhelming, especially for someone who hasn't had to handle these things before. Someone who hasn't had to handle these things. Like I was a child. Like I'd spent 41 years of marriage with my head in the sand while Robert handled everything. Robert and I handled our finances together, I said. I'm perfectly capable of managing things now. Of course you are. We just want to make sure you don't make any mistakes that could cost you later. Have you thought about what you're going to do with the house? The question came out of nowhere, smooth and calculated. What do you mean? Well, it's a 4-bedroom house. That's a lot to maintain by yourself. Property taxes, upkeep, utilities. In this market, you could sell for a really good price. Maybe downsize to a condo or something more manageable. I could help you with that. I know the market here is different from Seattle, but I have contacts. I could make sure you get top dollar. I stood up, pacing the kitchen, the phone pressed so hard against my ear it hurt. I'm not selling my house. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying it's an option. Something to think about. You'd have a lot of cash freed up. You could invest it, make it work for you. Or, she paused, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You could set up something for David. A trust or a gift. Estate planning purposes. It would be smart, tax-wise. There it was. The real reason for the call. I'll think about it, I lied. Great. And Margaret? David really does love you. He's just protective. You know how men are. I did know how men were. I'd been married to one for 4 decades. A man who'd protected me even from his own son. A man who'd seen something I'd been too naive to see. We hung up. I sat down at the kitchen table and put my head in my hands. They wanted me to sell the house. Free up cash. Cash they assumed existed. Cash they thought they had a claim to. But they didn't know. They had no idea how much Robert had left me. They were fishing, guessing, hoping. And I realized something in that moment. They weren't going to stop. They were going to push and prod and manipulate until they either got what they wanted or found out the truth. And when they found out the truth, that Robert had left me everything, that there was over $1 million they had no access to, what then? I needed to know what they were capable of. I needed to see how far they'd go. So I set a trap. That night, I called David. Sweetheart, I said, and I hated how easily the false warmth came to my voice. I'm sorry about the other day. You're right. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not thinking clearly. Mom, it's okay. I understand. No, you've been trying to help and I've been pushing you away. I think I'm just scared. Scared of being alone. Scared of making mistakes. You don't have to be scared. We're here for you. I know. And I'm grateful. Jennifer called today. She had some good ideas about the house. I could feel him perk up through the phone. She did. She did. And I've been thinking about it. Maybe she's right. Maybe this place is too much for me. Maybe I should think about downsizing. That's great, Mom. Really. Jennifer can help you find something perfect. There's just one thing I need to figure out first. The finances. I need to know what I'm working with. Howard gave me all the paperwork, but it's confusing. Could you come down this weekend? Help me go through everything. Of course. Yes. Jennifer and I can fly down Saturday morning. Just you, I said quickly. If that's okay. I think it would be easier. Just the two of us. Mother and son. A pause. Sure. Yeah. I'll come alone. We hung up. I sat there in the gathering dark, my heart pounding. The trap was set. Saturday morning, David arrived at 10. He looked tired, older than 39. There were shadows under his eyes and new lines around his mouth. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a pang of the old love. The love I'd had for the boy who used to climb into my lap with scraped knees. The boy who made me Mother's Day cards with backwards letters. The boy who was gone, replaced by this stranger. Coffee? I asked. Please. We sat at the dining room table. I'd laid out papers, some real, some decoys. Bank statements from our checking account showing a modest balance. The mortgage payoff document. Title to my sedan. Okay, David said, pulling the papers toward him. Let's see what we're working with. He went through everything methodically, making notes on his phone. He asked questions. I answered carefully, giving him just enough information to keep him hooked but not enough to satisfy. What about Dad's retirement account? He asked. He cashed it out last year. Said something about tax advantages. David's head snapped up. He cashed it out? All of it? I think so. Where did the money go? I shrugged. I don't know. Robert handled that. Mom, that could have been hundreds of thousands of dollars. You don't know where it went. Your father said he was taking care of it. I trusted him. I could see the wheels turning in David's head. The frustration. The disbelief. The growing suspicion that there was money somewhere and I was either hiding it or too stupid to know where it was. What about life insurance? He asked. There was a policy. Small one. 10,000. Enough to cover the funeral and some bills. That's it. That's it. He sat back, running his hand through his hair. Mom, this doesn't make sense. Dad worked for 40 years. You guys never spent much. Where did everything go? We lived, I said simply. We paid bills. We ate. We existed. Money doesn't just pile up forever. It does if you're careful. If you invest. Did Dad have a financial advisor? Not that I know of. David stood up, pacing now. There has to be more. There has to be accounts or investments or something. Did you check his office? His files? I did. This is everything. Can I look? And there it was. The question I'd been waiting for. Of course, I said. We went upstairs. I unlocked Robert's office and stepped aside, watching as David went straight for the desk. He opened drawers, pulled out files, rifled through papers with increasing desperation. He found old tax returns, insurance policies, receipts. Nothing that mattered. Nothing that would tell him what he wanted to know. Because everything that mattered was in the locked bottom drawer. And I wasn't going to give him the key. After 20 minutes, he gave up, slumping in Robert's chair. I don't understand, he said. Dad was so careful. So smart about money. He wouldn't have left you with nothing. I don't have nothing, I said. I have the house. I have my car. I have enough to live on. That's more than a lot of people have. But it's not enough for security. What if you get sick? What if you need care? Then I'll figure it out. Mom, he stopped, closed his eyes, took a breath. When he opened them again, something had shifted. Hardened. I think you should come stay with us. In Seattle. For a while. We can help you sort through everything. Make sure you're set up properly. I told you, I'm not leaving my home. It's not safe for you here alone. I'm perfectly safe. What if something happens? What if you fall or have a medical emergency and there's no one here? I have Linda. I have neighbors. I have a phone. It's not the same. He stood up, moving closer. Mom, I'm worried about you. Really worried. You seem confused. Lost. This isn't you. This isn't you. As if he knew who I was. As if he'd paid attention to me in the last decade. I'm fine, David. You're not. And I think, he hesitated. I think we need to consider whether you're capable of making good decisions right now. You're grieving. You're alone. Maybe you need someone to help with the legal stuff. Someone with power of attorney. There it was. Power of attorney. Control of my finances. Control of my life. Control of everything Robert had protected. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my child's face. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of this house. Now. Mom, I'm trying to help. You're trying to steal from me. The words exploded out. You want power of attorney so you can get your hands on money you think I'm too stupid to manage. Money you think you're entitled to because your father died. That's not. It is exactly that. You haven't called in months. You stayed in a hotel during the funeral. You've asked about money in every single conversation. You don't care about me, David. You care about what you think I have. His face went red. You're being paranoid. Am I? You sent your father an email 6 months ago. About my spending. About needing to manage me. His expression froze. You read Dad's email? I did. After you started circling like a vulture. I was worried. You were greedy. I moved toward the door. Get out. Now. Before I call the police. Jesus Christ, Mom. This is insane. I'm your son. Are you? Because my son wouldn't treat me like this. My son wouldn't see his father's death as a payday. We stood there, facing each other across Robert's office, across 40 years of history that suddenly felt like nothing. David grabbed his jacket. You're making a huge mistake. No, I said. Your father made sure I wouldn't. He stopped at the door, turned back. What does that mean? I smiled. Cold. Final. It means you're not getting a penny. It means your father knew exactly who you were. And it means I kept his secret. The house? Mine. The cars? Mine. Every last dollar? Mine. Robert made sure of it. David's face went white. Then red. Then something worse than either, calculating. We'll see about that, he said. Then he left. I stood there in the silence, shaking, victorious and terrified all at once. Because I'd shown my hand. And now I had to live with whatever came next. David didn't call. Didn't text. Disappeared completely for 11 days. 11 days of silence that felt like waiting for an earthquake. I went through my routines, garden, groceries, phone calls with Linda, but I was just going through the motions. I slept with my phone on the nightstand, checked the locks twice before bed, jumped at every car that drove past the house. Linda noticed. You look terrible, she said on day 7, standing in my kitchen with a casserole I wouldn't eat. Are you sleeping? Not much. What happened with David? You never told me. I told her everything. The phone calls. The emails. The trap. The confrontation. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, just stirring her coffee. Robert knew, she finally said. Yeah. All those years ago, when David got married. Remember how Robert was at the wedding? How quiet he was. I did remember. Robert had smiled, played his part, given the father of the groom speech. But something had been off. He'd been distant. Watchful. Jennifer's father, Linda continued. He made some comment at the rehearsal dinner. About how David was marrying well, how Jennifer came from good money, how David would never have to worry about his future. You were in the bathroom. But I was standing right there. And I saw Robert's face. What did it look like? Sad, she said. And scared. Like he'd just figured something out he wished he hadn't. We sat with that knowledge, two old women in a kitchen that felt too big, understanding too late what the man we'd both loved had been trying to protect me from. On day 12, a registered letter arrived. My hands shook as I signed for it, already knowing what it would say. I was right. Notice of intent to contest will. David Jeffrey Thompson versus Margaret and Thompson, estate of Robert James Thompson. He was suing me. My son was suing me for his father's estate. The letter said I'd exercised undue influence over Robert. That I'd manipulated him into leaving everything to me. That I was not mentally competent to manage the assets and needed a guardian appointed by the court. I read it 3 times, and each time the words got blurrier through the tears. If you're still with me, thank you. I know this is hard to hear. But check the description box below. There are other stories there. Stories about family, betrayal, and survival. You're not alone in whatever you're going through. None of us are. I called Howard immediately. I was hoping he wouldn't do this, Howard said when I read him the letter. But I'm not surprised. Margaret, this is going to get ugly. Can he win? No. Robert's will is airtight. Everything was done legally, properly, years ago. There's no evidence of undue influence or incompetence. But the process is going to be painful. There'll be depositions, questions, investigators. They're going to dig into your life looking for ammunition. Let them dig. I have nothing to hide. I know. But Margaret, there's something you should understand. Cases like this aren't really about the law. They're about pressure. David's lawyer knows he won't win. But he also knows this will cost you money, time, and stress. They're hoping you'll settle. Give David something just to make it go away. I won't. I know. I'm just warning you. This could take years. Years. Years of my son dragging me through court, accusing me of manipulating his father, painting me as some kind of villain. But Robert had prepared me for this. He'd left instructions with Howard. He'd documented everything. He'd known this day might come, and he'd made sure I had the weapons to fight it. 3 weeks later, I sat in a conference room across from David and his lawyer. Howard was beside me. A court stenographer sat in the corner, fingers poised over keys. David wouldn't look at me. He stared at the table, jaw tight, while his lawyer, a woman in an expensive suit named Patricia Clark, asked me questions designed to make me look confused, manipulated, or senile. Mrs. Thompson, did you understand the contents of your husband's will when it was executed? Yes. Can you explain in your own words what the will says? Everything goes to me. Everything. Yes. And you don't find that unusual? That a husband wouldn't leave something directly to his only child? No. We discussed it. We agreed. Did your husband ever express concern about David? Howard put his hand on my arm, a warning. But I ignored it. Yes, I said. Patricia's eyebrows rose. Can you elaborate? Robert was concerned that David was more interested in money than family. He wanted to make sure I was protected. Protected from your own son? If necessary. David's head snapped up. We made eye contact for the first time in weeks. His eyes were cold, empty. You don't really believe that, he said. This is Howard putting ideas in your head. This is your father's voice speaking from the grave, I said. He knew you, David. Better than I wanted to admit. And he loved me enough to protect me from what you've become. What I've become. David stood up. I'm trying to save you from yourself. You're alone, grieving, being manipulated by. Sit down, Mr. Thompson, Patricia said sharply. He sat. But the damage was done. The mask had slipped. The court reporter had captured it all. The deposition went on for 2 more hours. But it was over the moment David lost control. Patricia knew it. Howard knew it. Even David knew it, though he sat there stubbornly refusing to admit defeat. 2 months later, a judge dismissed the case. Not enough evidence. Frivolous claim. Awarded me legal fees. I won. But winning felt like losing. Because victory meant accepting that my son was really gone. Not dead, death would have been kinder. Just gone, replaced by a man who valued money more than his own mother. I'm 73 now. 10 years since Robert died. 10 years since I learned who my son really was. David hasn't spoken to me since the case was dismissed. No calls. No cards. No attempts at reconciliation. He and Jennifer had 2 children, my grandchildren, who I've never met. I see pictures sometimes on Facebook, when I'm brave enough to look. They have David's eyes. I wonder if they'll grow up to be like him, or if they'll be different. Better. The money Robert left me has lasted. I travel now. Mostly with Linda, sometimes alone. I've seen Italy, France, the coast of Ireland. Places Robert and I always planned to go but never did. I take my grandchildren, not David's but Linda's, on trips. I spoil them the way I never got to spoil my own. The house is still mine. I've repainted, redecorated, made it less of a museum to the past and more of a home for the present. The Mustang Robert restored sits in the garage. I don't drive it, but I can't sell it. Sometimes I just sit in it, hands on the steering wheel, and talk to him. You were right, I tell him. You saw what I couldn't. I think about calling David sometimes. Reaching out. Being the bigger person. But then I remember the look in his eyes across that conference table, and I know there's nothing left to reach for. People ask me if I regret keeping the secret. If I wish I'd told David about the inheritance from the beginning, been honest, given him a chance. I don't. Because some secrets aren't about hiding the truth. They're about revealing it. Robert's secret revealed who my son really was. My keeping it revealed what he'd do when he didn't get what he wanted. And that knowledge, painful as it is also freedom. Freedom from guilt. Freedom from wondering. Freedom from wasting years trying to fix a relationship that was broken long before I admitted it. If you're going through something similar, if someone you love has shown you who they really are and you're struggling to accept it, let me tell you this: believe them. Don't make excuses. Don't justify. Don't hope they'll change. Just believe them, and act accordingly. Protect yourself the way Robert protected me. Set boundaries. Keep secrets if you have to. Save yourself. Some losses aren't tragedies. Sometimes losing someone who would hurt you is the greatest gift you can receive. I sleep better now. The house doesn't feel empty, it feels peaceful. I have friends, hobbies, a life I've built from the wreckage of what I thought my life would be. And I have Robert's love, immortalized in bank accounts and legal documents, and a plan executed perfectly even after death. He couldn't stay. But he made sure I'd be okay without him. He made sure I'd be safe. That's what real love looks like. Not grand gestures or perfect moments. Just someone making sure you'll survive even when they're gone. I'm glad I kept the secret. I'm glad I waited, watched, and learned the truth. Because now I know. And knowing, even when it hurts, is always better than being blind. If my story helped you in any way, please leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your story, if you're brave enough. And check the description box below, there are more stories there. Real stories about real people surviving real betrayals. We're all just trying to make it through. And sometimes, the only way through is to accept that the people we love aren't always the people we need to keep in our lives. Thank you for listening to mine.